Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Tony Sirianni podcast. I'm thrilled to have our friend Stan Gregor with us. We're doing this again because Stan wrote a great article about equity and how it relates to advisors, and I thought it would be good to kind of expand on that in another podcast. So thanks for being with us, Stan. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So it probably in this instance makes sense to talk a little bit about your background as it revolves around firm formation and equity and just a little bit like that, so that we get into this discussion that people know that along with me you're an expert.
Well, thank you. I don't know if I'm an expert, but I do have a lot of experience.
You're pretty close.
Right?
There's only so many experts in this field right now.
Yeah, unfortunately, the way you become an expert is through experience, and a lot of times you make decisions that are the wrong decisions, and hopefully you learn from those. So, from my standpoint, I've been an investor in companies for some time. I set up a family office a number of years ago, and we're diversified in many different segments. We're in the hospitality space, we're in the real estate space, we're in development, financial services. So deals come to me and to our teams, I would say on a weekly basis. And most of them we don't invest in for a lot of reasons, right? The way they are structured, the waterfall, how we can get our capital back and whatnot.
And the management, I would think, right? That's a key element.
Yeah, well, to me, Tony, I look at two things. Who you partnering with matters. It really, really matters, right? So that's number one. It's the people piece that if you don't have the right people, I don't care what the structure looks like. It could be great. We're not doing it. I'm not doing it. I'm already going to check out for that. But the people piece matters. The second piece is how is the deal structured, right? And look, I've been at these major firms, whether it was Citi, Bank of America, Wells, Wachovia. I've run these big businesses. I've had those groups report to me so I can share with you kind of what we would sign off on as a deal. And most of those deals are there to protect the founders and the key people. It's not really about the next rung down. So when I look at deals, it's obviously the first piece is the people you're in, but the second piece is how is it structured. And I'll tell you my rule of thumb. I do not, and I would never invest in any more deals unless my capital is going at the same level as the founders and people up on top.
Yeah, so in my mind, that sounds like that's common sense. But advisors, I mean, I'm assuming you found this too, and certainly just looking at the space sort of bears this out. They're not asking the right questions. Advisors, it's literally like, and I've said this a million times, but it's an apt analogy. It's the cobbler's kids have no shoes. They're really good when they're talking to their clients and, I'm going to research this firm, or I'm going to make sure this fund manager is, they do all this research for investing in equity for their clients. But when they're sitting across from the guy and it should be transparent, they don't ask the questions and they don't understand where they fit in that order of how they're getting paid.
Yeah. I mean, what I see out there, Tony, I'm going to use this phrase, phantom equity or, dream equity. It's a dream. It's like a lottery ticket. And I would say we have some of the smartest people in financial services in our space, right? These advisors, they manage money for their clients. They're providing financial services and advice to them. But the industry has done a disservice because nobody's helping the financial advisor. Right. The financial advisor, here's my humble opinion. I bet you if a client came to the financial advisor and said, I am going to sell my company or a piece of my company to the following organization with this capital stack, they would say, are you crazy? No. Why would you do that? Yet advisors do it every single day. And it's unfortunate because I know you hear it. I hear it. People get into a transaction. They were sold one thing. And when they start realizing what's really under the covers, it's not there, right? It's a lot of dream.
The other thing that I've done several of these and successfully, but I've seen other people do it not successfully. My experience has been when you take money, there's compromises. So one way or the other, if somebody gives you money, there's a compromise. I have to give up some ownership. I have to do this. I have to do that. Sometimes these guys get so compromised that they can't deliver on what they said, because it's like those stories about traders. I'm going to take this money for the short term, then I'm going to pay it back, and it's not going to really impact the guy. And before you know it, you're in a thing where the firm is leveraged up. beyond where they can get out of it.
Yeah, and that's, I started the conversation with experience. I will tell you, almost 100% of the time I invested in situations that you just described, I lost money. If
Yeah.
not, I lost all the money too. Okay. So my earlier comment about it depends who you're with, who you're partnering with.
Yeah.
If you're partnering with somebody who has a proven track record, somebody who has monetized companies and businesses over and over again, right? That's kind of a check mark in my mind. When you come across somebody that is hopefully using your business and acquiring other businesses as that person, network builder, the antennas have got to go up, Tony, right? That is not a safe. I would not be putting money personally in
So
something
they
like
ask you in your article, we talked about this a little bit, but there are basic questions. One is equity in what? So what so talk about that. So what am I, when I get equity, what am I getting? Am I getting equity in this company that's investing in us, this venture, vulture, whatever aggregator,
that.
or
Right.
what am I getting?
Yeah, and again, that's another great question, right? So when we're putting our own capital, when I'm putting my personal checkbook into a business, I want to have some level of control and transparency.
Right.
So a lot of this equity that I see out there is dream equity, right? Or it's equity in a holding company that you have no control over. There's leases, there's people, there's expenses, there's a ton of different waterfalls where the guys that put up the money, they get their money first, right? And there's a pref on that. There's a guaranteed return, and then there's some kind of allocation that goes to them. By the time it gets to that investor that sold a piece of their business to get some of that equity, it's not worth a lot. And you've seen those stories out there. I mean,
I have.
look in the last 6 months. Look at the few monetizations that have taken place. Look at the guys at the top of the house and the private equity guys. Look at the percent of money they made, and then what's left over.
Right.
It's not fair.
No, it's not
It's
fair.
just not. It's not a fair deal.
No, and that speaks to who has control. And some of these, let's talk a little bit about voting and how they sort of play. Maybe that's something to look at, right? That might should make your antenna go up when you look at share and preferred voting shares. I mean, let's talk about that a little bit. How that all works.
Yeah. So if I put on my private equity hat, which I do a decent amount of that as well, where I'm personally investing, I want certain things coming back to me as a guarantee. So I want to have a guaranteed return. I want to know that every month, every quarter, every year, however the structure is, I'm getting money, whether the company's making money or not. Right. So that's what a pref is. You get a pref return, a preferred return on your capital. And if some kind of event takes place, I get my money back first. So I get a pref return, then I get my capital back. And then usually there is a waterfall on top of that, which is kind of, we call it an allocation.
Yeah.
But it's more taking from that stream, and it's distributing amongst the top of the stack, right? To the private equity guys and whoever's in that pool. And then what's left over is something that's distributed, fairly. But it's fairly after step 4, right? It's not after step 1. And I will tell you, if I'm an investor, yes, I will go into something like that. If I was selling a business, or if you came to me and said, Stan, what do you think about me selling a business to this kind of structure? Tony, I would tell you run as fast and far as you can. Okay. Right. You have no control over that.
Right.
You have no control over that. You can get diluted down to nothing. It starts off as something and it becomes nothing. And that's why I say it's dream equity. I personally would never invest in something like that. I would never tell my family to do that or friends to do that. And I would tell advisors, anybody looking at whatever structure is out there, because look, our industry, the average advisor is 56 years old. They got to start thinking about some kind of exit plan.
This is kind of what we had talked about, you and I together prior to even writing that thing, that there's a values-based element here, right? So if you're not, and you have said before, that, and I think you even said in our last podcast, you like to, you want to treat the advisors that come in like family, but that means something in the form of equity, right? So and for advisors, do they feel like they're being treated like they're part of the family, or are they outside? That might be the easiest way to look at it.
Yeah, well, look at our structure with Summit. Look at our structure with our partners at Merchant, right? It's one share class, right? So there is no hooray for us and screw you. right? If we win, we all win, and we win by different percentages, right? I may own 10% of the company, you may own 15% of the
But
company.
wait, that's capitalism, though. I mean, everybody has to understand there's a fairness there. If I'm bringing, 400 million to the table and I bought 50 million, I'm sorry, it's a different,
Correct.
just the way that. But we're all swimming in the same pool.
Correct, and that's important,
key.
right?
Yeah.
That's the fairness piece, and that's where it really affects me, because I see people get taken out there by deals that they don't understand that they don't know to ask the right questions, to your earlier comments, right? So from my standpoint, it's who are you partnering with, number one. Number two, what does the structure look like? And in that structure, I'm going to use the family story, right? If I wouldn't create that structure for my own kids and my family, why would I tell you to invest in it? That makes no sense for me, because you're just going to get hurt, or you're buying dream equity. You're dreaming of something that you hope happens, and that's not reality.
Right.
More often than not, it's a disappointment, it's a lawsuit, and it's just not a good scenario.
Right. Well, another way to sort of judge the health of it, and maybe an easy question to ask, is around distributions, right? So if the distributions work equitably or fairly, or if we're all part of that or not. I mean, you hit on it a little bit with the private equity stuff, but that seems to be a good question to ask.
Yeah, that's a question advisors should absolutely ask. So if you're going to exchange your company, which has positive cash flow, right, for some other equity, does it have positive cash flow? And what is that positive cash flow? And how does that relate to what you're giving up? So what I constantly see is companies doing 50, 60 million dollars of revenue. They're making like $500,000. Like that is ridiculous. You're one bear market away from out of business, right? And leverage is good when you're making money, right? So if you're making a high margin and you put on more leverage to make more money, that's great. But when you're at close to break even and you're putting on leverage, it's just like a margin account in a down market. It only hurts.
We've all been there.
Losing money doesn't become a better scenario by putting leverage on. It only exacerbates it. So operating leverage is critical, Tony. If it's not facing in the right direction, it's going to work against you.
Yeah. Well, and then finally, monetization, an exit strategy, right? So
right.
In my mind, it's a fair question to ask, at the beginning, what's the end game here? You know what I mean? And that may help reveal kind of what's in the head of the people, doing this. So what's the end game?
Yeah.
And how do they participate in this? And where do I participate? Right.
Yeah. So Tony, that's the biggest, I don't know what the right phrase for that is, but it's just a disjustice of, there's a lot of copycats out there of buying minority stakes, the story of going public.
I think that's what the minority stake thing is big right now. So everybody's doing it.
Yes, but if your company is not generating $500 million of income, true cash flow, you're not going public. I mean, it's just not real. Like, get real and get realistic. And if you do go, it's going to be on the OTC. It will be some bulletin board stock, which will just get slammed the second the window opens up that people can sell stock.
Right.
So a lot of those stories are just pie in the sky. Like if there's a monetization event, what's going to happen is those founders are going to sell the stock to some private equity firm. The guys and gals that came in are going to be so disappointed, because now they got a new boss that doesn't care about them. They sold out. They didn't hit their financial goals. You've seen it. I mean, look at the last 5 years. Look at how many deals, and I'm not going to go into names, but you've seen it. How many deals have happened where the top guys made money, ran, retired, skipped out of town, and everybody else is holding the bag? That's a horrible outcome.
Yeah, it's a horrible.
That's reality. Yeah, but that's reality.
You don't want to get there. The only leverage the advisors have is, hopefully you didn't sign away your book in the process. So you're still, you can make yourself a free agent. And that makes me worry about some of these aggregators. What do they think they're buying? Because these are baseball teams, not football teams, right? So advisors, but who wants to put their clients through, jumping between firms, because you couldn't get paid. It's a tough one to explain.
Yeah, look, I see it every week. You see it too. There's a lot of, I said before, there's a lot of firms out there trying to replicate this minority purchase model. There's no real exit strategy.
Well,
If you're looking at one, Tony,
explain the minority purchase model so people get just in the, you don't have to talk about exactly what you guys, but just in general how it works. I mean, Focus was doing it for a while. They were, it's not a brand new idea.
well, look, I'll tell you why we started, and then whatever's out there is probably a replica of that. But we felt that we wanted to create a partnership, right? We wanted to create a structure where it's a true partnership. That was number one. Second part of that was whatever we created, we wanted to make sure that we would have created a structure if we were doing it for our kids. So, Tony, you have kids. Let me ask you a question. Your kids are young kids, right? Would you tell one of your
Yeah, I'm a lot older than I look. I know I look like I'm in my 30s, but
90s.
So my kids are all in their 20s, but yes, I these are the kind of questions that they're starting to run into real issues now. So you want to try to really help as best you can.
Well, think about your children. Would you tell one of your children who has a long runway for growing their business, 10, 15, 20 years, would you tell them, hey, son or daughter, sell dad your business today? At today's valuation, dad's going to go monetize it. And I'm going to use the word loosely. Monetization is whatever, private equity or IPO, whatever, right? Monetize it. And when I monetize it, now you're going to work for the guy I sold it to, right? And dad's going to make a lot of money, and I'll probably take care of you. I mean, that is that's a horrible outcome, right? Or would you tell your son and daughter, hey, listen, you got a lot of runway ahead of you. Let dad give you some capital. Let me buy a piece of your business, just a small piece, but take that capital, be smart with it. Use dad's resources, use dad's contacts, grow the heck out of your company. And when dad takes his enterprise at some monetization event, you get to come along with that, and you can choose what you want to participate or not participate in, right? Yeah. So I asked you, which model would you do for your children?
Yeah, right. I would do that.
So the second is our model, right? We're investing in our people. We want them to grow. We understand that we would be doing them a disservice buying them all out today. It's not fair. That's taking advantage because we have money, right? Of people that need money. And that's not a belief we believe in. We believe in a longer term relationship. And then let's go into next steps, Tony. When dad does do that monetization, the children get to participate in that. And now they have a slug of capital that is really a worry-free scenario for them, right? I have money in the bank, and I still have this business, and I have choices. Do I want to keep this business? Do I want to bring in other people to expand it with me? Do I want to rebuild it to where it used to be as far as what I used to make in cash flow? But there are options that are in that person's choice at that point.
No, it's in their control, Stan. They 100%. And that's what I want for my kids, right? I want them to still be in a position to control, right? What that goes on, and you want them to get, because we are capitalists, you want to grow it and receive the value, for it. That's working on the advisor's, agenda versus, as we know, private equity aggregate, they have their own agenda. So your and management sometimes has an agenda, and it's hard, I think, for advisors to figure out where they fit in that.
It is, and look, I am a private personal equity investor, right? I invest in a lot of different projects. I have major construction and real estate projects that I'm in. I'm in financial services, as I said, hospitality. How I invest in those is not how we set up our business, right? We set up our business in a completely different way, where all of our partners are equal, other than what percent we've contributed and own in the company. But it's an equal structure, which is how I would do it with my family. It's no different, and it's the reason why our teams are growing the way they're growing, and feel as good as they feel being part of the process and the partnership.
Well, that's great. I think we're going to end on that note. So appreciate your help, with sort of sorting through and sifting where equity is, and from your point of view. Really appreciate it. So thanks, Dan.
No, thank you, Tony. Have a great day. Thanks for having me.
You got it.